Greetings, God bless. So, I'm reading this lovely book called 52 Ways to Walk, and it was talking about how sound can affect memory, that loud sound, excuse me, can impair memory. And, I noticed that, like, people, they got their loud motorcycles, they think they're so great, they got their really loud car. And I learned that even loud sounds can cause a concussion. So when I'm walking, it's weird. When I'm walking on the sidewalk, these people in their cars or their motorcycles, they zoom by me, and I think they want to be seen. I think they think um, they're either trying to be mean, or they think that they're doing me some sort of favor. And when a motor is set to be really loud, it's pump 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 pump. So they're giving me a concussion, like 50 concussions, as it's approaching and going away. And I'm sure these guys like it. And it makes me feel like I'm a targeted individual, to be honest. But so many machines, like I've worked in dish rooms, and I'm like, it's so loud. I've worked near industrial refrigerators. It's so loud, and just all this buzzing and rattling, and air conditioning, and all these machines that are supposed to be convenient. Even like a CD player has this constant buzzing, or a DVD player has this constant buzzing. And it's my understanding certain engines are set to a frequency, the most annoying frequency. So you can set the rotation so that it isn't such an annoying, piercing sound. But it's my theory that everything is designed with technology to be this really annoying sound. And and I know a lot of people are like, oh well, humans are a cancer on the planet, so everybody should die. And uh, and I think there's also people maybe in the truther community who are like, well, if you're not strong enough, then you should die. And okay, you guys are jerks and you should die. But this not only harms adults, it harms little babies, it harms nature. Like, I uh, I've done some landscaping recently, and the person offered me a leaf blower, and I'm like, I'm not gonna use that machine. And I just, because I can't stand the sound. But when I'm raking leaves, I'm hearing the twitter of little birdies and stuff like that. So I can hear that, and I can hear the wind rustling in the trees. And I'm not like traumatized, literally, by these loud machines. And man, some of these people who work on landscaping crews, they're going at um and I notice they'll be at an area with no leaves for like 3 hours, 4 hours, and they're blowing the same leaves around for those hours. Now, they could go down each side of the block somewhere that actually has a whole bunch of leaves. But it's so funny because these guys are leaf blowing, I don't know, what is it, a tenth of an acre for 4 hours. And, it's just very strange. Like, what is the point of having this sound doing unnecessary stuff where there's no leaves? Where, like, I noticed them blowing the leaves into the branches of a bush. So, you know, I mean, what is going on? They have 3, 4 hours, but they're like, they don't even want to pick up the leaves. And again, it makes you wonder if this is some sort of conspiracy, to disrupt people who are working from home or working near a place that has leaves. It's they want you inside some 25-story building or something like that. It's very strange. But again, this constant noise is disruptive, and it can actually cause brain damage, and it impairs memory. And so it just seems like all this technology, all these loud devices, I think, like cars, certain engines and stuff are just so loud. I got to say those hybrid electric vehicles, they have that kind of weird, silent sound, which is a little creepy because when I lived in San Francisco in the early 90s, there were electric buses and you couldn't really hear them. You had to attune yourself to the sound. So I understand, um, maybe having something loud is a safety thing, but like lawnmowers and whatnot, I think that when somebody creates an invention, it's designed to make a very loud, impressive noise. And I think it's there to sell to whoever's, like, running Walmart or whatever, to a buyer, and so the louder it is, it doesn't even need to be an effective machine. I think that things are designed to be loud, and maybe it actually, alters the buyer's mindset, and they're maybe more prone to being manipulated to buy. Because why is everything so loud? Like laundromat machines, washers, dryers, even refrigerator, like for a home. It's just everything is just so loud, and or it's designed to end up being loud that things need maintenance, and few people are spending money on maintenance. They're just like, oh, I'll wait until it breaks. And I wanted to add, um, so I it's my theory that Americans in particular, since we're such a consumer culture, that we are targeted, especially by the deep state globalists, and but multi-pronged on a lot of different levels, from electromagnetic frequencies to chemtrails to fragrances, and to sound, assault by sound. And this also just reminds me, like, when I've flown, like the indoor air of the cabin, of the passenger cabin, gets filled with what smells like fuel. And some years ago, this author of a book about airplane air quality, like she had gotten cancer, and so she published some books about like airplane safety for passengers and employees. And I wonder if she was like eliminated or whatever. But she said that pilots are paid $500, like I don't know, a month, or I don't know, but they're paid regularly a significant amount, the less amount of oxygen they provide for the passengers. So the air, the pilots get high oxygen into their, like extra oxygen into their area, but passengers get less oxygen. Now, how much of airplane rage is because of the lack of oxygen in the air? Like, so people are already dehydrated. They already just stressed out, making it to the airport on time, and packing maybe the night before, not getting a good rest. So people are already not well. But then the pilots are depriving the people, the passengers, of oxygen, and the stewards and stewardesses. So, and then there's fuel fumes being put into the passenger cabin at the start, not to mention all the pesticides that are used on the seats and stuff to supposedly, you know, address any parasites or whatever that the previous passengers might have had sitting on those chairs. And I remember one time there's like this, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 year old child. And I was like, there's so much toxic air from the fuel. And I was covering my nose, and I was just like, I just felt so bad for like babies on these flights because they're being totally exposed to toxins. Um, and lastly, so in 2020, I left a place that was having all their regular BLM marches. There were these yuppies, upper class, white collar, white yuppies were marching, and showing their signs and then going to brunch in the nice part of town. Um, you know, and the local next door was pushing masking, and I said, can we, like, what's up with this masking? Is this masking healthy? And I got banned. I got banned for asking about masking and for trying to, and also the 6G towers were being installed when everybody was told to stay home. So these mysterious white pods started appearing on different poles, and they would have these signs, warning signs at eye level, and they were these pods, these 6G tower things were installed at like 10 feet away from people's homes, and they were asked, "Oh, can we install these things in your on a telephone pole?" And they weren't told how dangerous they were. And the people were like, "Oh, sure, whatever," not realizing that they're going to increase their chances of certain effects, because 5G, if you look up, like, NASA has a whole paper about it, that it's something that it's a tool used by the military in their engagements of what do militaries do, because I can't say that explicitly because Big Brother is going to tell me that I'm mistaken. And the thing is, just look up 5G, what it's used by militarily. Just look up 5G, NASA, and the information is there. It's a fact. And the fact that I would get in trouble for saying what it is a telling thing. The fact that I got locked down, like I got banned and like shunned. Like I was talking with this one lady about these towers being installed, and her husband was in the military, and she stopped talking to me. She's like, "Oh, I'm concerned about, what, they're the 5G towers," and but her husband probably said, "Don't, like." He probably said, "Civilians got to die and shut up, don't talk to this lady." And that's not right. Like I do not care if the military says it's doing it for our best. Like, God does not say kill the masses of people without their consent, like that's, you don't, military people, you don't get to tell to execute innocent people. I'm sorry. Even if you think it's for the best, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And speaking of which, so remember when the injections started coming out and people were, like, so all of a sudden there was no such thing as the flu. All of a sudden there's no such thing as pneumonia. Nobody knew anything about, like, everybody just got amnesia. There's no such thing as pneumonia. There's no such thing as the flu. There's no such thing as Lyme disease. There's no such thing as parasites. There's no such thing as these millions of other diagnoses that existed in 2019. So doctors were forced to, like, any diagnosis was CV. That's because there was $500,000, $500,000 on the table for each death by CV. So what's the mandate of a hospital? It's to make money. It's not to make you happy. It's not to make you feel comfortable. It's to make you feel comfortable and happy enough for them to get their money. Which, what does that mean? Like, so they get the CV money, and then they get the organ harvesting money, right? So you harvest various parts of the eyeball. That's very lucrative. The heart, the lungs, the liver, kidneys. I mean, that's millions of dollars of on top of your $500,000 for the CV patient. Our hospitals are gonna be like, "Oh no, that's just too wrong." No, they don't care. They're about the bottom line, from the decision makers to the employees, and they had already gotten rid of the really better employees, because the better employees were not going to pollute their perfect in pedigree genetics. So all the good people who had integrity were removed, and then they got all these temporary workers, and these temporary workers are like, they're in it for the money. So the only reason why they'd spend 6 months somewhere, somewhere else, uh, like they're in it for the money, they're in it for fun, like, being in a new city or something like that. And who knows what else. So these people are not going to be activists. Very few are going to be activists. And a couple did become activists. A couple did talk about it, and they got bashed by their colleagues and the public. But it's so, anyway, so during this time, so people were being like, so people were coming down. It's not called pneumonia anymore. It's not called influenza. There can only be one thing it is. So they were feeling sick, and of course their friends and family were like, you got to go to the hospital, right? And and maybe there was other additional things being put into the food, air, water supply to exacerbate pre-existing conditions. And keep in mind, those 5G towers do displace air molecules. They displace oxygen molecules. So people may have been more short of breath because of the new 5G towers and everybody's cell phone, like sending more messages, like trying to get that ping or whatever, the thing that a cell phone's talking to a tower, and a tower's talking to a cell phone, talking to another cell phone, talking to another cell phone. And the fact is that human bodies are antenna, our skin, our hair follicles are antenna for 5G. If you look up the Sabrina Wallace information, like our human bodies, I think, are the antenna. Like we're told it's our devices, but according to Sabrina Wallace, we are actually like somehow antenna and like kind of the hard drive or something, like something's some major thing that is beyond my ability to understand at this time. But so so people were getting sick in 2020, 2021, and due to pressure and maybe due to like, wow, I got that thing, like it's due to some type of pride, because I have known people with cancer that were so proud that they went through chemo and got surgery. Like they were bragging about it, and it was like a club. Now, in the Lyme disease community, which is what I'm in, we're not like that, and in other kind of like the PTSD community or whatever. I mean, like in communities I've been in, people are just trying to find solutions. They're not proud of it. And I'm like, why would anybody be proud that they injected these toxins into their body and got butchered and made um, doctors a lot of money? And they survived, but they survived self-inflicted. They survived the masochism that they surrender to, because I think it's very sadistic. Like a majority of doctors, something like 97% of doctors would never get chemo. All right. So majority of doctors have at least that common sense. They have at least that amount of self-preservation. They wouldn't do it, but they'll totally get you into it. You know, I mean, it's just so telling of how psychopathic not only the doctors but the patients, because the patients are so proud. And I'm sure the nurses and docs are like, yeah, you did great. You did the chemo, the stupid thing that only a masochist would do, or only an ignorant, very ignorant person would put themselves through, or their loved ones through. And I know I've known people who have gone through chemo, and they believe in it, and they will never consider anything else. They would never consider it being a problem, even though they have to go back like every few months to go get more chopped up and stuff like that. Like doctors aren't going to look into, oh, you keep on getting cancer in the same part of your body. Maybe is this possibly a parasite? Are these possibly cysts? Are these, like instead it's like, oh, cancer, it's a big boogaboo. And I think people are kind of addicted to the status of being a cancer patient. It's really crazy and sad. But so anyway, people were being doped up with remdesivir, which is really hard on your kidneys, and it shuts down your respiratory system. And then their alveoli of their lungs were being sheared off with the ventilators. So, um, you know, doctors were doing these cruel, painful executions of people, of patients, like trusting innocent patients. Not to mention other things that doctors and nurses did during this time and possibly are still doing. But at the time, hydrochloroquine, I believe that's the name, and that horse paste stuff that now is escaping me, but that was made illegal. Like right when this started, like Dr. Stella Emanuel, who practices in America and Africa, like she was like, we use hydrochloroquine for malaria. Like you take it, it's called Sunday medicine. Like so, it's like you take it every Sunday to protect you from malaria, and it's a trusted medicine. It's been used for decades by millions of people in terrible conditions, in less sanitary conditions than than people have in America. Let's say in a hospital, but I think it was the FDA that banned hydrochloroquine. So they banned this trusted malaria medicine, which might have helped people contend with perhaps some type of infection, parasitic Lyme related infection that might have been exacerbated by 5G, by exposure to snake venom, cone venom that was possibly put in the water or possibly put in the air through chemtrails or added to food or pesticides, household cleaning products, household cosmetics, who knows? So and that horse paste that I can't remember, that was also banned, not allowed. All of a sudden, like so these remedies, these antidotes to infection were made illegal, and they had been trusted, normal, like I mean, off-label use. Okay, like people. It's weird because people are like willing to have people die for CV, have people die, commit suicide. There was 300,000 suicides during the spring 2020 lockdowns. So for those like 3 months, 300,000 people committed suicide. So these maskers, afraid of the very air, were content that hundreds of thousands of people committed suicide because they were told not to go outside. They were told to suffocate themselves. They were told to isolate themselves. Like these maskers were content with that. You know, it's and I mean it's part of this nightmare that we are still in, because those maskers are not. They have no conscience. They have no reflection. They have no doubts whatsoever about what happened. So hydrochloroquine was banned. The horse paste that was anti-parasitic was also banned. And Dr. Artis is coming out with how snake venom was found in various testing in people who were diagnosed as CV, having CV. But CV is actually the same thing as snake venom or cone venom. So snake venom and cone venom and these other like very exotic venoms seem to be found in all CV diagnosed people. It's found in their urine and their blood and their feces and whatever. And so he looked up studies. Okay, let's look up snake venom, because snake venom is used in medicine. It's used in a lot of pharmaceuticals. And so, taking your regular whatever might be a product that's derived from snake venom. And so he looked up, okay, what stops snake venom pharmaceuticals from working? And one of these things was nicotine. And one of the statistics that was strange to some was that how smokers never got CV, or smokers who did get CV, because the testing was totally bogus. They recovered. They were totally fine. They weren't debilitated. And so it was thought perhaps nicotine could help. And one of the latest stories that Dr. Artis talked about was how the hospital wing noticed the smokers were fine and those who didn't smoke had CV. So they gave the non-smokers nicotine patches, and the people who were having a bad CV healed like in a week. So guess what the US is going to do? Guess what like other countries that are part of this deep state are going to do? They're planning to ban nicotine I think by 2030, if not sooner, if not like 2025. And so I mean that it's just so crazy. So and the thing is fortunately nicotine is found in other things. Um and I don't even want to say. I mean I'm also like don't I mean I'm like you know, because it seems like when a truther comes out with a antidote to the evil, then the evildoers they're watching. They're the only people watching. Like, and maybe two other people are watching. So the evildoers, they're like, oh, they're on to us. So we've got to ban cigarettes. I mean, of course, the point of nicotine is not to smoke cigarettes. It's nicotine patches because the cigarettes have this pyrazine, which is addictive, but the nicotine itself is not addictive. They had to add pyrazine to make cigarettes addictive. But the Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And you know what? It's not a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of interest. It's a lack of focus or motivation or courage or caring. I'm not sure what it is. But I wanted to make this video because I was just researching this herb called horehound, and it's a bitter herb that's mentioned in the Bible. And like a couple years ago, uh, it was like I don't know 20. It was either 2020 or 2021. Maybe it's 2021. And like in 2020, I moved to South Dakota to escape the BLM yuppies, the white collar workers with their BLM signs going to brunch after they protest and not allowing me to ask questions about 5G and masking on Nextdoor, which I'm boycotting. But so, anyways, I was in South Dakota because I was hoping that that would be better, and it wasn't because it was a Marxist stronghold of this what's called a land back movement, which is this anti-American, anti-Caucasian Marxist thing that like they think that the natives think they own the land there, and as if they built those buildings, as if they installed the sewage and the electricity and whatnot, as and you talk to some of these people, like they can barely like function in life, but they think that your store and your home and your property belongs to them. And the thing that's even more bizarre is the folks in charge of the city aren't doing anything about it. They're kind of allowing like violence against business owners. So, um, and just like regular people. Because when I grew up in New York and never learned to drive. So as a pedestrian, I would be like these groups of drunk native, whacked out, drugged up native people would corner me, in the middle of nowhere or on the sidewalk when I'm trying to cross the street and ask me for money, telling me I owe them reparations. And the police station was like 3 blocks away, but there were never police around to deal with that. It was like you were on your own, And what was really annoying is it would be a bunch of people and I'd be a solo person, just like I'm just trying to go to the laundromat. I'm just trying to go to the store. Like it's 20 degrees. It's icy sidewalk. There's aggressive drivers. Like life is hard enough for me as it is for you to try to blame me for history and expect me to rectify it as we stand here in gale force winds. So when I was going to one of these stores in gale force winds, in 20-degree weather during the winter in Rapid. So I was going to the little drugstore to buy more of this horehound candy, and they stopped carrying it. So they had all these other candies, but they stopped carrying that specific one. And I was like, oh, and I liked it. It was just a different kind of flavor. And yesterday I was um, looking it up and learned that it was a biblical bitter herb. And I was doing some more research today, and I learned it was an antidote to poisons, and that kings and pharaohs always had horehound growing. And I think that's why it was removed from that little grocery store or little drugstore in South Dakota. Like, folks think they're all safe. They're in the heartland, or it's not California or New York. No, those places are also under some sort of deep state control, I think. Um, and of course, I don't have any confirmation of this, but uh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I had never seen horehound candy anywhere I have ever lived until I was in South Dakota. Um, but the fact that it was taken away, I just think is telling. And maybe it was something to do with the supply control issues as well. But you know, I wonder if that is it only a matter of time for that to um, be banned up there with hydrochloroquine and the parasite paste for horses and things like that, and nicotine. So yeah, it's just I really wonder, like if there's a book out, all the things that were banned by the trusted agents of the public good. And that's my little trusted agents of the public good. So that's I did a little acronym because it wouldn't fit in the title. But like I bet certain things are allowed for governors or presidents or something like that, but the masses are not allowed what's just normally healthy for us to have. I mean, I bet our water is worse than the food we're exposed to, or air is like worse. I mean, just like pilots, they get to have extra oxygen in their air, but passengers don't, you know? And then people are like, oh, look how bad people are behaving on the plane. I mean, I think it's definitely more so now. And who knows if there's less oxygen being pumped into the passenger cabin. Maybe this is a deliberate thing on the part of airlines. That's a question. I mean, that has to be considered. Like, are pilots not giving enough oxygen into the passenger cabin? Is there enough oxygen in the airport? And with all the 5G going on, with all the cell phones that are on, like that probably is reducing the level of oxygen in the cabin, because you get what, 50 people or 100 people, so 100 smartphones going on in an already oxygen depleted area that's also just been sprayed with pesticides. I think there needs to be maybe more oxygen in places with high concentrations of people with smartphones, because there's just less oxygen around. So, what do you guys think? Thanks for watching. God bless.